Hey, this is Bradley Chubb, and you're listening to The Snap.
Hey, this is Cortland Sutton.
Hey, this is Tim Patrick.
And you're listening to The Snap
with Sidney Jones
on Broncos
Podcast Network. Yeah.
What's up, Broncos country? Welcome back to the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube for another edition of The Snap. I'm your host, Sidney Jones. The Broncos are set to hit the road on Saturday to head to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. So joining me on this week's episode is someone who will help bring that game to your television screens, NBC Sports Sunday Night Football sideline producer, Betsy Riley. Betsy, so appreciate you joining me today.
Happy to be here, Sydney.
Happy to have you. How's the NFL season been treating you so far? I know for me, it's hard to believe it's already December in week 13.
Yeah, things get real now. Once the calendar turns to December, it usually brings really great football. So we're excited about that. But we've had a great NFL season thus far. We've had a lot of really memorable Sunday Night Football games already. And here's hoping that we have a handful more as things really heat up.
Agreed. I know Broncos country is all very happy that our game got flexed and we moved to Sunday Night Football. Were you guys kind of surprised when you found out that news?
You know, every spring when we look at our schedule, we know that second half of the year, once we enter flex territory, we know things are suggestions on paper. We always have a sense that there will be some flexing. So we're really excited about this matchup. Obviously, it's a meaningful game, and we're excited to watch the Broncos and the Chiefs in Kansas City this weekend. I think many NFL fans have their eyes on this game. If you're a fan of playoff football, you're certainly watching on Sunday night. Certainly the implications are very real.
Absolutely. Well, Betsy, as my listeners know, one of my main goals here on The Snap is to highlight some of the most prominent and dominant women surrounding the NFL, and you certainly fit into that category. Just to get us going here, can you tell me a little bit more about your current role with NBC Sports?
Sure. I'm the sideline producer, which means I really help to support and lead our sideline team. This week, Catherine Tappan will be on the sidelines, and in game, this takes on sort of a couple of different primary functions. Catherine is our eyes and ears on the field. And so Catherine really in game will be helping us to understand what's happening on the sideline, whether, a player is injured or a player is subbing, if the conditions on the field require information or some additional details, she's really there to be our eyes and ears. So all of that information flows through me. I sit in our production truck, and I'm really charged with helping lead Catherine and also helping find places where it makes sense for Catherine to be incorporated into our broadcast to add a different vantage point or a different point of view.
Right. When it comes to this Sunday, are there any specific storylines for this game you guys already are planning on focusing on for the broadcast?
Well, certainly it's not lost on us that, first place in the AFC West is up for grabs. So that is the headline of the game. That's why we're there. That's why we're covering this game. I think we're all really excited to watch that play out. Also I think it's an interesting thing because you have these two teams that have long storied history. Obviously, they're very familiar with one another. And I think we're all really keen to see how the Broncos come out and if the Broncos will be able to find their way to a win, which has evaded, really, they haven't won in their last 11 meetings against the Chiefs. And so I think we're curious, we're all excited to see how this Broncos roster responds to that challenge. I think about that team in 2015 that last beat the Chiefs, and it was a very different Broncos team. It was Peyton Manning, Von Miller, the eventual Super Bowl 50 championship team. So, we're really excited to get to know the new Broncos roster. This is a new look Broncos team. In fact, only one player from that 2015 team is on this roster. So it's really exciting for us to see some of the new faces, to see some of the new players, and to see if they can finally find a way to get past this foe.
Okay. It's certainly long overdue for sure. Well, just to go a little bit more in depth on your game day, Betsy, kind of what are your game day responsibilities. Can you kind of walk me through what a typical game day would look like for you?
Sure. Our team, prepares with editorial and production meetings early in the day. And then we head out to the trucks as a production team. And Fred Godelli and Drew Esikoff, our producer and director, lead our team through something called a fax, which is really our production team's opportunity to rehearse. So we spend a fair amount of time as a production unit rehearsing all of the possible elements as they may be executed in the show. We sort of joke that the fax is sometimes harder than the game itself. The fax requires concentration, it requires precision. And really, I think the goal is for every member of our team to walk away from fax with a clear understanding of the expectations, a clear understanding of how we'll execute certain elements. And if you can make it through fax, you're very well prepared and well positioned to make it through the game successfully. After fax, soon thereafter, our announce team will arrive. They'll have an opportunity to get settled. Catherine will walk the field, sort of look at the field conditions. She'll follow the kickers. She'll watch the pregame warmups. It's really an opportunity for our team to see the players on the field, really see, how is Teddy Bridgewater's shin functioning? How is he warming up? Is he favoring either side? What's that look like? So it's really an opportunity for us to see players 2 hours prior to kickoff and really get to know how they're functioning on game day. And then we walk into and step through rehearsing with the talent, the announce team. And before you know it, it's time for kickoff. And then once the ball is in the air, really my responsibilities shift to having and finding ways for Catherine to add value, to contribute, to add a different perspective to our broadcast. So, as Al and Chris are upstairs announcing the game, Catherine can really add texture that's unique to the sideline. And so as the game develops, that's really where I focus my energy.
Now, I know for a lot of the, on-air sideline reporters, they spend the whole week prior doing prep, doing interviews with players, coaches, getting ready for Sunday. What does kind of that week prior look like for you? Do you go through the same preparation process that similar to what they do?
Yeah, great question, Cindy. And you're exactly right. Catherine is spending her week speaking to players. And Catherine, Fred Godelli, our show producer, and I really, we have a team that walks through that preparation together. We will discuss topics that we think are interesting and pertinent to the game. And so I spend a lot of my time doing research. I spend a lot of my time reading and researching the team, the players, the coaches, really to help Catherine and our team prepare for the week in a thoughtful and productive way. So, we sort of come to this, we don't have the luxury of following the Broncos every single week.
Right.
We know your fans do. And so, it's not our goal to come and to produce a broadcast that is telling the Broncos fans things they already know. Really, it's our charge to come in and produce a high-level broadcast that is insightful and that is thoughtful, and that really sort of picks up with the narrative where the week begins and the game ends. So, I think for me, my Monday through Thursday is spent doing a lot of reading, a lot of researching. I watch film, I watch previous broadcasts, and then slowly that shifts to really sort of more of the writing and the preparation for the elements that will come to life in our game.
Take me back to kind of the very beginning of your career, Betsy. How did you start down this path to becoming a producer in the sports industry?
I am not the poster child, Sydney, for becoming a sports television producer. I was a college student. I was a college athlete. I ran track and field and loved sports. And so sports have always been incredibly meaningful to me. I grew up in a sports-centric household. I'm one of 4 kids, 2 brothers and a sister. And we played sports and we played hard every single day. So sports were really just a part of my life. I studied finance and philosophy in college, not quite the blueprint for this career, but around my junior year of college, I became interested in finding a way for sports to be part of my career long-term. I knew I was not going to run professionally. I knew that wasn't in the cards for me. I knew I was lucky to be able to compete at a Division I school. And that was really the height of my athletic career. I had no false hopes that there was anything beyond college athletics for me. And so I became interested in sports journalism. And my parents, loving as they are and supportive as they are, said, Betsy, you're a double major, you are on the 4-year plan, and you are not switching majors on our dime. So explore this interest, scratch the itch, but graduate on time and find yourself a real job. So pragmatic as they were, it turned into actually quite sound advice. I used every elective I could. I studied journalism and sports journalism on the side with elective courses or summer courses. And then I graduated and went into a career in investment banking because I just had no idea how this could possibly be a real job. At the same time, on a parallel path, I would still go back to my university on weekends for this little side gig that I did. Wow. And I would still continue to gather stats. I would track yards after the catch or quarterback hits and hurries to help support the graphics production assistants. And slowly I realized that I liked my side gig a lot more than my regular gig. And so slowly I came to terms with the fact that I need to make a little bit of a leap. And thankfully NBC, I guess I was sort of like a bad penny they couldn't get rid of because I kept calling and asking for side gigs. But ultimately I left my real job, took a leap of faith, moved to New York City and pursued this side gig. And that's about 20 years ago. Thankfully, I've been very lucky, a little bit persistent, a little bit crazy, and I found a way into the production world.
That's awesome. I love asking that question because everyone has so many different paths that they took to get to where they are today. And I love that you said you're not the poster child for it, but not a lot of people are nowadays. Everyone takes their own winding path. So I love that. Well, kind of along that path, Betsy, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced along the way and how did you overcome some of those?
You know, I think because I did not study sports broadcasting or film in school, I really learned on the job. So I said yes to everything. And I said yes to fetching waters and stat sheets. I said yes to being a tape PA, production assistant. I said yes to being a graphics production assistant. I said yes to any and all jobs that were available, because that was my way of learning on the job. That was my education. I was educated from the ground up. So I think for me, one of the great challenges was exactly that. I was learning as I was doing it. And, I'll never forget my first ever job as a graphics production assistant was for an arena football game. I had no idea what the rules of arena football were. I spent the week like I was cramming for a test, watching film, watching arena football games, studying the rule book, trying to understand the sport. And I think in my earliest years, I often felt like I was cramming for tests. It didn't feel natural to me. It really didn't slow down quickly. Because I was learning so much, I was learning how to do the job. I was learning about a incredibly niche sport sometimes. Right. So it took me a few years to find my footing and to really feel that I understood both the subject matter and the substance of the work.
Right. Like you mentioned, fast forward a couple years, you then become the first woman to serve as the lead producer for NBC's track and field coverage at the Tokyo Olympics. Being a collegiate track and field runner, what did that honor really mean to you?
Yeah, Sydney, it was the experience of a lifetime. I don't think that, 18-year-old Betsy could have dreamt that. I would not have been audacious enough to dream such a dream. I never could have imagined it. Certainly track and field is a sport I'm really familiar with. Certainly track and field is a sport that is close to my heart and that I love, but I think as I've progressed in production, what's really inspiring and what's really intriguing is a complex challenge and a puzzle. And track and field provides that. An Olympic broadcast provides that. You are dealing with multiple events on the track, on the infield, in the throwing rings, in the jumping rings. Those are happening simultaneously. You are time shifting an event for coverage happening in Asia that's going to be coming back home on a delay. Sometimes you're live. So there are all of these unique challenges that come with Olympic sports, and all of these unique challenges that come with track and field as a sport. And so for me, certainly it's a sport I'm passionate about. Certainly it's a sport I love, but also I'm a total broadcast nerd and a broadcast junkie. And it was a really complex broadcast, and that was really fun. So the thing about the Olympic experience for me was that it was an incredible team. We could not have done that job without an incredible team. And we had the best team you could ever hope for. So I think, much like sports and the success on a field really depends on a well-functioning team and a well-coached team, I think the same is absolutely true in television. And the Tokyo Olympics were one incredible example of that.
Right. When you were there, what were kind of some of your main goals in connecting, the audience here, NBC Sports' audience, to some of the athletes that were, performing over there in Tokyo?
Yeah, we knew this was going to be a different Olympics. Typically at an Olympics, you will have family and friends in the stands. Typically, right. You will have stadiums that are roaring, that are just brimming with the excitement of the athletic feats being performed. That was not the case. The Olympics were held in empty stadiums. Family and friends were back home. They were not in the country. So one primary goal that we had was to connect particularly American family and friends with the athletes. So we knew that the Olympics would feel very different. We knew it would feel quiet. We knew it would feel a little bit empty without the crowd. And so our goal was to attempt to turn some of those challenges into positives. One, we wanted to embrace the natural sound. So we wanted to embrace the sounds of the sport, the sounds of the athletes competing. And I think we were able to achieve that. And then the second part was finding ways to connect the athletes performing in Tokyo, the athletes competing in Tokyo, with family and friends back home. And thanks to technology, we had some really incredible ways to connect family and friends to athletes as they were, celebrating in the mixed zone or celebrating their highest of highs after they won an Olympic medal.
Certainly a weird year last year.
But one thing that's been really fun, we even, just to think about football, for example, I don't think anyone would wish for empty stadiums, right? We love the fans. We love the roar of the crowd. However, I think back in some of the more memorable moments from last season for us as a production team were afforded to us by those empty stadiums. I'll never forget being able to hear, Derek Carr call an audible at the line of scrimmage, and in a fanless stadium, right. You can hear it, and you can hear those audibles. And certainly we all know who made Omaha famous, but it was really neat to be able to hear the audio at the line of scrimmage in a way that was never previously possible.
Well, just a couple more here for you, Betsy. Throughout your experience in this industry, how have you seen it really change and evolve in regard to seeing a lot more women in your role, not only in the NFL, but, across different leagues?
Yeah, I think change and evolve are good words, Sydney. I'm not the first. I have followed in the footsteps of some incredible women in this industry, both in the world of NFL football and also in the world of sports. And so I am not a pioneer like the women who came before me. I will say I have seen more women at the table, at the proverbial table, since I've been here. And that's really exciting. I think for me, as I look at the young women and in the next generation, I think the most important thing for me to see, and the thing that I really hope for, is that women know they have a place. Women know they can do this job. And I remember when I first started, and never from my leadership did I hear this, but I remember hearing, people would say, well, how can a woman possibly understand football if she's never played? And that was a really common thought. And it feels really antiquated to say that now in 2021, but it wasn't uncommon in 2003 or 2004. So not that long ago, that was an idea. Now, I haven't really shared with people that this is some scoop, Sydney, but I did play flag football. I was in a co-ed league and I was the MVP of a team. So I don't share that often.
You should.
There is a little football playing experience in my background. But I think what I've seen over the years is just, I've seen that sentiment fade away. And I think that's an awesome thing to watch fade away, because I think as that sentiment fades away, you bring to the table a larger population, you bring different ideas, you bring great ideas. And I think that's a really good thing for the sport. I think that's a really good thing for the television production. I think more ideas at the table, diversity of ideas at the table, I think makes for a more interesting broadcast. And I think, we continue to see that week in and week out.
Last one here for you, Betsy. Throughout the experiences we've talked about, what's one of your main pieces of advice you would give someone, really no matter of what area in this industry they want to work in?
I always tell people, go to what interests you. I think when you're interested in something, you work really hard. I think, you asked previously, Sydney, if I imagined that I'd have the role of the track and field producer. No, I didn't really imagine that I'd have the role of the sideline producer. I just didn't think about that. I really have always been interested in learning. I've been interested in being the best I can possibly be at a certain job function. And so for me, I've always really let my interests guide me. And I think as a result, I've always been willing to work really hard. When you're interested in something, it doesn't feel like work. And so I would tell anyone, regardless of gender, regardless of age, go to what interests you, because what interests you will motivate you. And I think that also allows you to be your best, most authentic self.
I agree. I love that. Love what you do. You never work a day in your life. It's true.
That's right.
Certainly true. Well, Betsy, I can't thank you enough for your time. It was truly a pleasure getting to talk to you today.
You too, Sydney. Have a great one.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of The Snap. Thanks so much for tuning in and looking forward to seeing Betsy's work on NBC on Sunday night. Meet me right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube next Friday for another episode.